Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Meeting Protocol Monthly podcast, where we chat with some of the coolest people in the business and bring you useful and relevant information about what is happening in the world of meeting planning. I am Dora Figueredo, the head of events and education at Meeting Protocol, coming to you as always from my living room in New Jersey. We have had a few experiential marketing experts on this podcast if you've been listening for the last 2 years, which, by the way, happy to year 26-month anniversary to me. I'm very excited. When I started this podcast, I was like, I wonder how long I'll be able to get people to talk to me on it. And now it's been over 2 years, so I'm pretty thrilled about it. So anyway, we've had experiential marketing experts on this podcast in the past, and I always learn a lot from them because that's not exactly my specialty. So I always love to talk to folks who are good with experiential. And so that's why I am really excited to introduce you all today to Melissa Lee, founder and CEO of Paige Creative, which has an impressive list of clients. She's an events pro with over 15 years experience, having previously worked at Time Out, which I think every event planner on earth can say that they have used Time Out at some point in their event planning and also their personal planning, Taboola and Event Kings. She has created an outstanding meeting protocol credentialing course, which is going to be worth 1 credit. So anybody who's listening to this in September 2024 and beyond, you can check out meetingprotocol.org to find Melissa's course with us. I am one of the people who goes through the course, and so I can guarantee you it is excellent. And we are going to offer listeners of this podcast a small discount on the course if you email me directly at education@meetingprotocol.org. So without further ado, thank you so much, Melissa, for being with us today. Tell us where you're joining us from today and what got you into the events industry.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. I'm super excited that we met, and there's been so many opportunities with Meeting Protocol. So it's been a very exciting relationship thus far. I am joining you from Mexico City. So I'm a New Yorker, born and raised, but I would say about 3 years ago, maybe 4, I came on a trip to Mexico City, fell in love with it. The timing of everything just wasn't right, but eventually when it was, I kind of made the move down here. But in events, you kind of go where the events go. So I'm in Mexico City right now, but this past month was crazy. So I was in 4 or 5 different cities. So I'm based here, but still all over the world, as you know.
Great. So let's start with the basics. I have
Yeah.
asked other experiential marketing professionals this question, but I seem to get a fun twist on the answer every time. So I'm just going to go and open up with this for you as well. What is at the heart of experiential marketing? How would you describe this?
You know, it's so funny because I've spoken to a lot of experiential marketers, and it really is a different definition from everybody. My event planning journey, when I started a small event planning company, and it was kind of like we did social, we did corporate, but corporate was just like small or like holiday parties just for like internal or like summer picnics, things like that. And then when I left that job, I found agencies like BMF Media and other experiential marketing agencies, but back then I didn't know what it was. I'm like, what are they doing? Because it looks like they're doing event planning, but it's not necessarily events. So it was a little confusing for me. So after tons of research, years of trying to niche down and figure out exactly what I want to do with my life and build a company on, I found experiential marketing. So to me, it's very different because it's not just an event, it's more of an experience, and it's helping brands get consumers to be one with their product, right? So, and not just their product, their brand, which is really important. So when you go to an experiential marketing event or you at an experience, it's really understanding the brand and understanding what their product is, how their product was made. So just learning more instead of just like a traditional event where, I don't know, you go and have a few drinks and have fun, and some people leave and they're not even sure who threw the event or who was behind sponsoring it.
Yes, that is unfortunately very common. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So that's why I love experiential marketing, because I think just how close I am with my clients too, it's you really are involved, and it's like my products too. So, and I have an interesting perspective when I come in because I am most likely one of their consumers. So I come in with a very interesting perspective. So really knowing how consumers want to interact with their product and what it takes for the consumers to really understand their product and want to purchase it. And product or service, it's not necessarily a product.
Yeah. So I think that most listeners of this podcast could put together a very fun event for most brands that would approach them. And so like you're saying right now, it's not just about an event, it's about like really engaging with that brand. So what's the difference at the core of it between a generally awesome event where people have fun, but maybe don't really know what who the brand is, and a quote memorable brand experience? And I mean, I guess maybe the actual question is what is brand engagement, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
For sure. There's an interesting quote, and it was by Walt Disney, and it says, people spend money when and where they feel good, right? So you can go to an event. It could be, you walk in, there's like some high tops, there's like some fun branding and decor, there's like a few drinks. That's not necessarily going to evoke emotion within people, right? So that's the goal when you're doing an experiential marketing experience, is evoking emotion and attaching that emotion to your brand and your product. So one thing that I think really differentiates an experiential event from a traditional marketing event is brand synergy, right? So what is that? So that usually gets broken into three buckets, I'd like to say. So one would be personal connection, the other would be positive association, and then making shareable experiences. So what are those three? So personal connection is when you find activations within this experience to make someone feel this personal connection to it. So for example, if you have activations where people can get into an avatar, right? That it kind of, if you're selling maybe like a video game, they can actually become the avatar and they can like experience the world of the video game like through themselves as an avatar. You're bringing that person into your product, right? So that's a good example of personal connection. Positive association would be something similar to like, okay, where do people have fun, right? Carnivals. You barely see people not having fun at carnivals. So a lot of people, when they're doing these experiential marketing events, that they create this kind of like fairy tale type, even like Disney or environments where people already associate in their head that they're going to have a good time and it's a positive experience. And then they associate your brand with that positive experience. So really, it's a lot to have to do with psychology. And then what was the third one? Shareable experiences. So obviously, one reason why a lot of these brands throw these events is because creating these experiences not only affect the consumer that is coming to these events, but also through social media, through brand awareness. Like there's so many ways where these experiences can be shared. But bringing it back to experiential marketing of like, you want to make people at the event feel like they want to share. People can take pictures, but are they going to be really excited to take pictures and post on their stories? So how do you make them feel VIP at an event? Or how do you make them feel like, wow, this is so unique. I want to share it. My friends aren't going to believe that I'm here. So really creating those like wow moments and wow factors like within these experiences to get people to just organically want to share.
Sounds great. I love that you're bringing up Disney so much. I guess it was on LinkedIn recently. Somebody posted that they went with their child to Disney, and their kid had a balloon that like couldn't be taken into the park or on the rides, I guess. And so they left this balloon or this item um, with guest services. And when they picked it up later, it wasn't just like an exchanging of a ticket, sort of at a coat check of like, oh, let me get my item for my ticket. That they had so when you like leave your dog at a doggy daycare or something, like they'll give you a little sheet afterwards that's like played with other dogs, check, like ate all of his kibble, check, like that kind of thing. They did that, but for like this inanimate object, right? And it was like, had fun with all the other balloons, check, took a nap, check. And it was like,
On
that's
another
so
level.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
that's like a whole other level that I probably would never have thought to do, but like what a way to make the parent feel super excited, not just the kid. Maybe the kid was even too young to fully appreciate it, but like the parent will receive something like that and be like, they think of everything here. So it sounds like that's the kind of thing you're trying to evoke when you do experiential marketing.
Yeah, and kind of the three, brand synergy bullets that I like hit, those are more high level, but It's so true. Like I always tell people, especially I do consulting too for either smaller brands that can't necessarily afford an event planner, and even just the small little integrations within your event make the biggest difference. So it's thinking of those little things and sometimes just stepping away and saying how we can make this a little bit more special and more unique and more of an experience versus just someone coming to an event. So it's so true. See, something like that, it really doesn't take that much effort or logistics. It's just the impression that it leaves on the guests. It's so true.
Yeah, that's right. How do you help your clients tell their brand story at an event? Because I think that's probably something that a lot of people struggle with, which is like, what is the story, that thing that has to be really clear when you walk away and not just sort of a very general or vague sense of, oh, this was nice, you know?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question because I get this a lot, and not only my profession, but for instance, I have a girlfriend that's in PR, and she gets this question a lot too. And it's very important that when your clients come to you, that they know their brand, because I can't tell somebody what their brand is, and people that you hire can't tell you what your brand is. So when I onboard clients, I make sure that I have a questionnaire and just make sure that they fully know and understand like what their brand is, what their product is, and how they want that put out into the world, right? Because I think that is so important. And then
Mhm.
just as far as like implementing that into an event, I do something and it sounds like super simple, but I walk through this with my clients, and it's even clients that I'm throwing events for, or again, for more smaller brands that I'm just doing consulting for, the 5 sense rule, right? So I literally have them meditate, close their eyes, think of the 5 senses and what they want the guests to experience when they're walking through the event. Because you want a full rounded 360 experience. So even with the guest smell when they walk into the room, right? It's like, okay, is this more like I just did an event for Tazo tea and it's more of like a summer type theme. Now, like putting more of like suntan lotion type like scents throughout is super important, because then people come in and they're like, wow, this really does remind me of summer. Something that you wouldn't necessarily think of when you're doing more of like the nitty gritty type of planning. Or one thing that's always an oversight that I see with events is food. And people think like, okay, F&B, it's just something to check off the list, and I did it and I got it, I picked my menus. But how do you want your brand like displayed or presented through food? I went to a like female founders conference recently. Everything was great. We get to lunch and they had like fried chicken sandwiches. And I understand that the sponsor that they had in there was like a fried chicken sandwich sponsor, but you have all of these women, like all of the mocktails are like super light. And I just feel like to have fried chicken sandwiches at like a daytime event in LA for women was so off from the
Yeah.
event. Whereas I went to another one and they had like couscous bowls and like cute little wraps. And I'm like, okay, that aligns more with the brand and the experience that they're trying to like convey here. So people don't think through those things. And I think that's super important. And like that's like a great example of what makes an experiential marketing event different from just a traditional event. It's when you think of all of these things. Like, what are guests going to hear when they walk in? Do you want them to hear just like loud people talking? Do you want them to hear music? Do you want them to hear certain sounds? Like if I'm doing an event where it's supposed to be like, I've even put in like nature or like bird sounds when they're not all like organically there, because it just adds to the ambiance of what they're trying to portray for their brand and their product.
I love this so much. I'm learning so much. This is like a whole other lesson. So thank you for all of these. What are a couple of your favorite activations? Maybe some that you've done or some that you've experienced. What are some really cool examples that you have off the top of your head?
Oh, there are just so many, and there's so many different types of activations. But I will say, I think Netflix did a really good one. I'm not sure what experiential marketing agency had put it on, but I love when it's more of like an experience that you go through, like a dinner party or something where this one was for a show that came out and it was like a murder mystery dinner. And they had everyone dressing in it, and you went in and everything was so like mysterious. You don't even know who worked there versus who was like just a guest. And just the whole way that they did it was great. So I think I really like activations that tell a story, that you go in there and you feel like you just went to like, I don't know, a whole experience versus just like going to an event, you have an activation here and an activation there. And those are great. And it's an experience on their own. But me personally, like I just love that and love all the details that people put into it. I love games. So whether it's video games, board games, card games, so anything that integrates games and gets people to get together and you know, some of the best activations or some of the best outcomes from a brand activation is when people build community within the actual experience and people come out and they've met people and they feel like, you know, that's probably my favorite. I
Yeah.
don't know, nothing specific, but just in general,
No,
I think.
I think all of that's great. I think whoever's listening to this episode will be able to get ideas from that. And you mentioning games reminds me of recently I did a trade show activation where it was a New Jersey theme. Everybody here already knows how much I love New Jersey, and the main activation was setting up basically a beachy boardwalk type section where we had beach chairs, and I wanted to bring in a kiddie pool with sand. Unfortunately, I couldn't because there were some rules about that. But I hope that next year there will be able to be beach chairs with sand. And we had a backdrop. We printed out, like a 12-foot tall by like 10-foot wide beach scene. And then a common thing on a New Jersey boardwalk, which anybody who's ever gone to a state fair or anything like that, doesn't need to be the New Jersey boardwalk, will be familiar with a spinning prize wheel. Here in New Jersey, we call them candy wheels. Traditionally, they were candy wheels. You would place your bet, on blue diamond or something, and whatever candy is associated with that. If you won that, you would win the candy. So we got candy and snacks that are produced in New Jersey. And we gave everybody little wooden tokens, and we made our betting board New Jersey themed. So we had New Jersey landmarks, and of course a Bruce Springsteen and a Bon Jovi part of the board, and giants and jets and blueberries, because Hamilton, New Jersey is considered the blueberry capital of the US. We are no longer, I don't think, but for a long time we did have a lot of blueberries, and also we make a lot of cranberries. So we had a cranberry section of the betting board. So anyway, a lot of folks came to the booth and they were like, what's going on? This seems interesting. I want to spin the prize wheel. And so we would scan their badge and they'd spin the prize wheel. But it became a thing where like everybody was kind of around and like cheering people on. And it felt like we were truly on the New Jersey boardwalk, everybody like, yay, you won, or like, oh, I was just one off, and it was super exciting. So little things like that really, and people like they would get their candy boxes when they won, and they were like, wow, I didn't know M&M's was made in New Jersey. You're like, I didn't know Welch's Candy Snacks is a New Jersey brand. And so it gave us an opportunity to not just engage them in a really fun way, but like they walked away learning something about New Jersey. So it was a really great experience.
Isn't that cool? See, I love that so much. And I feel like a lot of corporate events, like I have a lot of clients that come to me and they're just corporate companies, but they have their own brand too, right? We think of brand, we think of like product or service, but just companies in general have their own brand. So I think they're moving in the direction of experiential marketing just with all of their events. So I don't know, I feel like there's going to be this movement where everything is just going to be experiential marketing and not necessarily just the traditional events that we've known. But your example was great. I mean, look at Welch's, right? It's like they get exposure from that. And now people, like every time they see them, they're probably going to think of your event and just be like, oh, did you know that they're from New Jersey? So it's really, you make memorable impressions on people when they get to like align an experience with different products and companies.
Yeah, I agree.
Super cool.
Thanks. Yeah. I have to give credit to my marketing director. She was the one who came up with the idea, but executing it was a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
carrying around a 75-pound prize wheel was not super fun.
Yeah, no, I've been there. I've been
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of your go-to ROI indicators when you're working on experiential events and brand marketing with clients?
So to be honest, I love using influencers at events. I think they are so powerful. I'm not sure, do you use influencers at your events or
No,
not?
haven't yet.
Yeah. they're game changers. I think if you work with the right influencers, I've worked with some where I've been like, okay, you're on the no list. We're not working with you again. But a lot of the influencers that I've worked with, like they are super passionate about what they do. They are very aligned with the brands that they promote. They are very excited to be at these experiences, and the ROI from them is just like, there's just so many metrics that you can get from utilizing an influencer. Like, and you can utilize them pre-event, on-site, post-event. There's so many use cases for them. And they can help sell products. They help promote like actually going to events. So I think when it comes to like a client that's really focused on heavy metrics, I always want to include an influencer because they are super powerful and really pushing the needle to make these successful.
Oh, I like that so much. I think that there's kind of a negative connotation in some ways with influencers. And so it's pretty cool to hear you say that that is a really, really effective. How I don't have you encountered any clients who are like, "Ooh, I don't know about an influencer," or is everybody generally still pretty excited about them?
Everyone, yeah. I mean, brands know like influencers are the golden ticket. So I've never worked with a brand that were like, no, we're good on influencers.
Okay.
We're good on exposure. Yeah, and media is great too, right? PR is great. When you have media come to your event or media that's helping to promote an event. But I feel like especially in this day and age, it sounds terrible to say with all of this fake news going around, it's really hard to believe what you read, right? So I think with a lot of these media outlets, it is great and they do have a lot of reach. But when it comes to influencers, like they have fans, they're literally like celebrities and they have people that really trust their judgment. I mean, I know that I follow a lot of influencers that I feel like they are trustworthy and they are authentic in what they do. So when they promote something or when they say something, it's like, okay, that must be like a great product or that must be good. Whereas if I read an article on it, I'm like, oh, and also
Mm.
to the visuals. So yes, like in some media outlets, like you have pictures, you read blogs. I'm more of a visual person. So if I start seeing videos on social and you see people actually interacting with their products, so it's really an extension of a brand experience, but on digital because you're actually seeing them interact with the different products. So I think it's just a different
Sure.
experience. And I think, yeah, brands are like, I'm sure maybe in other different sectors of events, maybe it isn't as popular, but even when you have speakers come, like a lot of these corporate, like I'm working on an event now, and they're having like celebrities come and speak at these events, like they're influencers in their own right. Like they have their own following. They have this like trustworthy following that it's like, okay, if they're at my event or if they promote my event, like it's going to take it to that next level.
Yeah, that's true. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit here because I want to talk about your own creative events agency.
Yes.
How did you get started? Are you like a one woman show or do you have a team? If you have a team, how do you divide the work? Because burnout is also a thing. I meant running your own agency must be absolute insanity in a good way. So yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
It's been crazy. It's so funny. I just had, well, not really funny, but I just had a really crazy month. And as soon as my last event was over, I think my mind told my body, like, okay, it's done now. And my back stopped working. Like right now, I'm on like 8 pillows. Like I can't
Oh
really
no.
walk that well. And I'm just like, all right, I need to relax. I need to like learn to manage the stress levels. I mean, event planning can be really stressful. And when you have like boom, 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 event after event, and just like all of these things popping up, it becomes extremely stressful. But not trying to deter anybody that wants to become an event planner because it's also very rewarding. And my brain is creative and also like is good at logistics. So I feel like it helps me like utilize both parts of my brain where in like past positions that I've had, I haven't really been able to do that. But so I started off as a small event planning company on Long Island. And then I wanted to learn more of like what makes a successful event, right? Outside of like maybe a bride is smiling or is happy, or like how do you measure like the success of an event? So then I got a job on the marketing team for an ad tech company. So I learned how events fit into like a 360 marketing campaign and how to strategize that and how you measure success of events. And then I got a job at Time Out. So I was working with brands and agencies. And then the world ended, right? I got furloughed. I cried for like
Oh,
2 weeks.
no.
I know. And then I was like, okay, I can get unemployment. Like things aren't going to be that bad. And then, yeah, I just started freelancing. I started freelance marketing because there was no events. And then events started slowly coming back and people were texting me, say, hey, can you help me produce this event? And I don't know. It just came to me was like, oh, maybe you should start your own agency, like that little voice in your head. And I was like, oh yeah, that might not be that hard. I'm like, it's been quite an adventure. Because you are everything, I'm finance, I'm marketing, I'm production, I'm sales. So I am getting to a point now where I have an assistant. I think for my business as it is right now, it doesn't make sense to hire anybody full time, but I do have contractors that I utilize for marketing, for sales, for things like that, where they have allocated hours per week. But scaling is definitely difficult, especially when it comes to events. You need to have steady events coming in all throughout the year in order to be able to take on that overhead. So it's really playing that balance of course, when you first start, you get excited, you want to build a team, and it's like, okay, I got some money in, so I want to hire someone here and I want to hire someone there. But then you realize it's like, wow, this overhead is a lot. And there's some of like months when there's no revenue coming in from events because sometimes they all land in 1 month. So I always say to my friends, and now I've surrounded myself with a lot of people that own their own business. And when I first started, I would hear people be like, okay, yeah, 10 years in, I'm really getting the hang of this thing. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how did it take them 10 years? I feel like, I'm 6 months in and I've got my, S Corp and my bank account. And I feel like I figured everything out, but it really does take that long. Like even when I first started, I wasn't even sure, like, okay, if I want to just focus on brands or if I want to do like retreats or so it really does take a long time to figure things out and figure out like who are you in the space, like who's your company, who's your brand, right? And yeah, I'm still on that journey. So it's been open for about 2 or 3 years. So, and it's been great, but it's been very challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know what it's like to be like a full-time employed person doing events, like just managing my workload this way. I can't imagine what it's like to do all of the aspects of the business. Um, it's, I mean, I hate the word, I have some problems with the word hustle, but it's a hustle. It is a constant hustle. You never ever stop,
Yes.
because you're always having to sell yourself. You are the only person who can bring in your next paycheck. And so it's an enormous amount of pressure.
Yes. And I think too, like sometimes I like be at my desk and I just daydream of a 9 to 5, even though any company that you're working for with planning events, you're not working a 9 to 5.
Right.
You're an event planner at heart. So, but I think one thing that's different is that my other clients don't know what I have on my plate with my other clients. And you never want them to know that, right? Like to me, like they're my only client. So, or to them, I would say. But in corporate, I feel like when I worked at different companies, they'll be like, they kind of have an understanding of like, wow, she has all of that on her plate, or wow, she's planning all of those events. So there's some grace given, or just some like understanding of like the full scope of what's going on. Where like when you're in the thick of it, like in your own business, it's kind of just like only you really know what's going on. And it's kind of like, oh,
Yeah, yeah. Do you tend to use the same, well, what I want to ask is, do you tend to use the same contractors over and over again, kind of give your circle more business? But I guess that's also event dependent because there's some things that have to be done maybe in a certain location, a certain region. So you have to have a pretty wide network of contractors and freelance colleagues and friends.
100%. And I think, yeah, that's where building your business and having it take time, because I do events all over. So my CRM of just like all of the vendors that I have it broken out by city because there's just so many that I've used. I'm honestly really lucky because just through my network, like the small event planning company that I worked with when I first started, like some of my best friends are now like, they like are my vendors for like promotional items or like floral. So like one of my best friends, like I was in her wedding. She is my go-to floral designer when I'm in New York, and she's just amazing. So just through like my network of like friends just being in the industry, like I have a lot of really good contacts and vendors that I trust.
When we started planning this recording together, and I was getting ideas for questions to ask you and learning a little bit about your background, I read through the blogs on your website. And I got to say, there's a lot of people who have blogs on their websites and they wrote like 3 blogs the first month they started their website and then never wrote a blog again. And it's like, this hasn't been updated since 2019 type of deal. But no, you have up-to-date blogs that are super useful. I particularly love the 12-week year method that you described. And listeners, I highly recommend go to the pagecreative.com, check out these blogs and this particular blog. Um, so event planners require excellent time management, I think. I hope everybody agrees who's listening to this. Um, but no matter how well you manage your time, there's always sort of that like 72-hour before or a week before scramble to finalize all the details. Cause, like you said, things fall through your cracks, things happen, whatever. Sometimes things don't get confirmed in time. So the method that you describe emphasizes clear and achievable objectives, which is a place that I do think many of us can use help. So can you give us an example of how the method changed your objective planning process? Like, I mean, I don't know if it's a fair thing to say, like, uh, have uh, have so and so planned by this day. Like, would you break things into much smaller chunks, or yeah, I would just love to know a little bit more about this method and how you keep yourself balanced without it sounds like you have been overworking yourself a little bit, but how it helps keep you balanced a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I've always heard about the 12-week year, but I never read it. And then I got a group of friends together. I was like, hey, let's read this. Let's have an accountability group. We were meeting like Mondays at 8 a.m. for, yeah, it even lasted longer than just the 12 weeks. But I think it's really great. And it's really great for me personally, because although we have these like grand dreams and goals, it's hard for me to sit down in the beginning of the year and say, okay, here's everything that I want to do this year, breaking it down by each month. I think things change so rapidly, like even different opportunities come up. And especially since I'm still new in my business, I think maybe people who have been in business for 10 years, like they really have an idea of their trajectory and it's a little easier for them to plan year by year. Maybe not, there's not as much shifting. But for me, and this happens on a personal level and professional level, it's just easier for me to plan in 12-week sprints. So I actually have a ClickUp board and I do plan out for the quarter. So in the beginning of the quarter, I'll say, okay, what do I want to accomplish for these next 3 months, right? And I break it down, put everything in that column that says for the quarter. And then I also have different columns that say the different months. And then today or this week, next week, this month, and then the next 2 months. And then that way I can break down and see like, okay, what do I have for my bandwidth like coming up in the short term, right? Or, okay, these are my grand goals happening quarterly. Like, what do I need to do and back that up in order to make that quarterly goal? So that's what I do. I use ClickUp and it really helps me. And again, things do shift within those 12 weeks, but I think it's just easier and it seems like a more attainable goal when you know that you have to reach it in 12 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. 12 weeks doesn't it simultaneously feels like just far away enough and not that far away that it's not like, oh, a year from now, big lofty
Exactly.
goal, like a lot far away from now. Yeah.
Exactly. Or it's like, it just, I feel like you put things off and you wind up like rushing last minute. It's like, okay, what were those goals? And I think with 12-week year, it just works for me. And what systems do you use? Do you use ClickUp or how do you organize? Like, what's your project management tool?
I use Asana.
Okay. I was
Yeah.
going back and forth on Asana and ClickUp, and I just love ClickUp.
Okay. Well,
I
I'm
just,
going to make a note of this so I don't forget. I'll look it up as soon as we're done here.
yes. Oh, you've never used it before.
No, no, I've never used ClickUp. Nope.
Okay, yeah, something to look into, but similar with Asana, you can do the same thing. I like board view for that specifically, but that's usually how I plan everything out, and that's really all of the methodology from the 12-week year.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that very useful bit of advice. I think um, how busy we all are is, I think that's just like the constant of thorn in event planners side or the event industry side. There's just there's always so many details to finish, and even when you do like your own personal planning, like with you, where do I see my business going, what do I want to accomplish in my business, and not just events. So I do think this is a worthwhile conversation. Like we probably could have a whole podcast, a whole episode just about this in particular, so thanks for touching on this.
Yeah, of course. Even, yeah, like I moved into an apartment in January and it's like, I'm like, okay, I want to do all of these things, but how are you going to do all these things? It's like, okay, what is like the end goal after the 12 weeks that you want the apartment to look like? Okay, great. So how do we break that into like each week, just doing something little by little to like get that grand scheme, vision that you have in your head. But if you don't break that down, it's very overwhelming.
Yeah, that's true. Um, I, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, you recently moved to a new city, recently-ish, and you created a creative women in business community. So you craved being a part of a community, so you created this community. It's called Creative Women in Business Coffee Meetup, I believe. And I've said on previous episodes that event planning can be a really lonely job because a lot of us kind of work on one-person teams. In your case, you work on a single full agency team. Um, and we don't get to collaborate closely with other event planners. So this type of meetup appeals very much to me. So tell us why you started it, how it's going, and how you continue to nurture this community and turn it into a self-sustaining community.
Yeah, so when I moved to Mexico City, I moved with a bunch of people. There was like 15 of us that came. We were all traveling. I was in a travel program, so we all wound up in Mexico City. And then little by little, one person would leave, another person would leave, go back to the States. And before I knew it, it was my boyfriend and I. And I'm like, okay, we need friends. I need girlfriends. And, I don't really, I'm 35. So when I was in my 20s, it was like easy to meet people. I feel like I was going out, I was definitely drinking a lot more than I drink now. I like barely even drink. And I really am interested in wellness. And I think with my career, it's been a focus of mine to implement more wellness because I do have those moments of burnout. And when I'm just so busy, it's like my health just goes out the window. So that's why I started Wild and Well. So it really bridges the gap between wellness and then creative women in business. So if I'm building my business, I think I would want to be surrounded by people that are building their business too, and we can share resources. And so I kind of started it from like a selfish place where it's like, okay, I want friends. I want to learn about all these wellness things happening in the city. I want to talk to people about building their business and learning from them. And it started with two people coming for coffee. And then now it's up to 30 women coming for coffee. We do free coffee meetups every other Friday.
Wow.
Yes. And then we started doing workshops. So doing like health focused workshops or business focused workshops. Like one that we have coming up is facial and finances, right? So I'm having a facialist come in and kind of like teaching about different facials to help you if you're kind of like on the go, like running for work, or if your skin is kind of like inflamed from high cortisol levels. And then I'm going to have someone come in and teach about like certain aspects of finance for your business. We're going to do a quarterly planning workshop. It's kind of turning into its own business. And I'm like, wait, I don't be careful what you wish for, because I'm like, I need to focus on Paige Creative. And now this is just like turning into its own animal. Um, we also do like hiking trips. We just did an awesome workshop on human design, which is so interesting, and how like based on your human design, like energy type, like how you can take that into your business. There's just amazing women here, whether they're from the US or Europe or if they're Mexican. And it's so interesting to just see all of these cultures come together and everyone's experience. And it's just been amazing. I can't stop smiling. It's just been amazing. And just being able to help people, and everyone's at a different level. There's people that are helping me that are my mentors, and there's people that I'm helping that have just started their business. So yeah, and everyone's friends now, and everyone goes and hangs out, and it's been great. It's been
Oh,
great.
good. Good. That was going to be my next question. Like, are you actually friends with them, or is this like strictly the sort of every other Friday, one and done type of deal?
No, yes, actually friends with them. And that's something that I was missing because yes, it's so cool. I get to work from home when, I'm doing production, or, I don't have to go into an office every day, but it gets kind of lonely. Like I was always best friends with people that I've worked with.
Mhm.
And especially one of the last companies that I worked with, I mean, they were so big on company culture. We had like a volleyball team that I was a part of. I mean, there was always something going on where it really made that difference, and it really made you want to work there because of the community that it brought. So that's something that I was really missing. I'm a very social person, and I was really lacking that. So here it is, wild and well. So it's been really, really great.
Well, that's great. Do you still meet up at a coffee shop, or do you rent a meeting space? Or with so many of you, I
Yes.
imagine you need a big space.
Yes, so it was very serendipitous because I was at a dinner, and it was like a ticketed dinner, like a supper club, and my boyfriend and I sat next to this couple, and they said, "Oh yeah, we just opened up a restaurant. It's like a cafe restaurant in one of the areas here in Condesa." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm starting to do these coffee meetups." I'm like, "But I only have like 2 or 3 people. They open up at 11." I'm like, "I don't want you to open up early just for my, group. So if it winds up growing, then I'll hit you up and we can do it there." Well, it started growing, and now I just solely do the coffee meetups at their restaurant because I just love them so much. Like, the girl that runs it, she's half Mexican, half Japanese. She's from San Diego. She's just a
Oh,
boss. She works full time. She runs this restaurant. They like own Airbnbs around the city. Like, they're just like, she's like the epitome of wild and ball. Like, it's just been such a great fit. And I've even hired her, like recently I just had an event and I hired her to come work with me for Paige. And
oh,
she came to
cool.
an event with me in Puerto Vallarta because she speaks Spanish like fluently. And it was great. So it's been amazing. And I just feel like, I don't know, I'm a big believer when things are like happening in flow that it's telling you it's in the right direction. And just everything with that networking group has just been in flow.
That's wonderful. I'm so happy. It makes me really happy. This is great.
Yes, it's amazing. Yes. And I can add you to the group chat if you want, because there's always resources getting thrown back and forth of different like webinars that are happening, people asking for different things. It's been great.
Yeah, that's great. I love to be a part of a supportive group of women. There's not always enough of that. So, yes.
100%. I know, I feel bad. My boyfriend's like, "Where's the one for men?" Or, the girl who runs the tree house, her boyfriend too is like, "We need to make one for men." I'm like, "No, I don't know. I like to keep it to women." And people have been
Mhm.
like, "Oh, maybe we should do some co-ed events." I'm like, I don't know. I want to be inclusive of all, of course, but I think it's just like a different conversation when women come. We come, we're like, we don't need to get all dressed up for coffee. I feel like if men are there, that
Yeah.
gets distracting. And
Yeah,
so
changes the dynamic a little bit.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
yes,
Great.
yes, yes, yes. So very excited.
Um, all right, so I'm gonna ask you our closing out question here. This has been a really lovely conversation. I'm sad to end it, but hopefully this is the first of many in the future. Okay, so what is the coolest event that you've been to, either as an attendee or the planner producer?
Hmm. Okay, so this one actually was many years ago. I would probably even say 10 years ago, but it was a theater that was opening on Long Island, and they wanted to do a 1950s theme to open. And we produced it, and it was just so magical. Like, you could produce it and we had like everybody be in character, like, the bellboys, and like everything from the theater was to just make it into a 1950s. And when we got there, it was unbelievable. Like, you really felt like you were in the 1950s. Like, I wound up having to be a cigar girl, which was because the person didn't show up. So I wind up having to get into the cigar girl outfit and do that, which I feel like in a lot of events, I almost had to be a belly dancer at one event. Like, if vendors don't show up sometimes at the last, you're like, okay, I got to just make this work.
Yeah.
But it was just so magical because you really felt like you were in the 1950s, and you were like at the theater, and the guests came dressed like they were from the 1950s. And, even like the tickets that we were handing out, like every little detail just felt like the 1950s. And I think it had such an impact on me 10 years ago because I haven't really seen anything like that. Now with experiential marketing, like as we spoke about, like that is a lot more popular. But back then, there weren't really events like that. So to me, I just loved it so much. It made an impact on me, right? Like we were talking about, like I'm still talking about it. I've done so many events over the past 10 years, but I think it was also just a guiding light for me, even if it was subconscious, to just be like, wow, this is what I love to do. I love creating these types of experiences.
Sounds like so much fun. I love it. What was the audience for it?
It was just people in town that were just celebrating the theater opening.
Oh,
So
great. So like open to the community.
yes, open to the community. There was like elderly, there was like families, there was like young people. It was just great. And everyone was just like excited. I think there was some history behind the theater too. I think the way that it closed was kind of like unsettling to people in the community. So they were really happy to open it back up again. And I think the people that were opening it up were like, very like big into the community there. So it was just like the energy like that night was just so great. And yeah, just it was amazing.
That sounds wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. I had a really nice time chatting with you. I learned a lot. And for those who want to learn more about you and your work, where can they go for more information?
So you can visit my website at thepaigecreative.com. We're actually revamping it. So it is going to be brand new in September. So I'm really, really excited about it. And then you can also follow me on Instagram. So that's the Paige Creative. And yeah, those are probably the best ways to get in touch.
Great. And listeners, take note, the page is with an I, Paige, creative. Uh,
AIG.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Melissa, for being here.
Thank
And
you. This was a lot of fun.
great. And thank you to all of our listeners and Meeting Protocol fans for checking out this episode. Don't forget to go to meetingprotocol.org where you can sign up for our newsletter that includes links to all of our new podcast episodes, a CMP tip of the month, and all of the resources for all of the things related to meeting professionals and CMP. Thanks.